Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with a brand new early Netflix series review, and today we'll be discussing a new comedy sitcom starring Jamie Foxx. We're talking about Dad, Don't Embarrass Me, which will be coming to Netflix this Wednesday, April 14th. Now, I got the chance to check it out early, courtesy of Netflix, and I'm going to let you all know what I thought of the series, and if you all should check it out all in this spoiler-free review. But before we dive into it, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts, which you can find those links in the description below. If you are new to this channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing to the channel, and while you all are at it, make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you can get the alert from when I drop new content. It would mean a lot to me if you all can like and share this review. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate all the support. And in the comments, let me know if this show was on your radar, and of course, if you've seen it, let's discuss it. Let me know some of your favorite moments, your favorite episodes, your least favorite moments, but also, more importantly, would you like to see a season 2 of Dad, Don't Embarrass Me? And also, let's have some fun in the comments. Let me know your favorite Jamie Foxx movie or show, as well as your favorite sitcom growing up, and also your favorite sketch comedy show growing up. Let's have a discussion about that in the comments. I'll share mine at the end of the video, so stick around to see my list. But before we dive into this spoiler-free review, for those that aren't too familiar with the show, who's behind it, what it's all about, let me fill you all in. Single dad and cosmetic brand owner who's trying to figure out fatherhood on the fly when his strong-minded teenage daughter moves in with him. Now, this show was created by Bentley Kyle Evans and directed by Ken Willingham. And this show consists of 8 episodes, which range between 26 to 30 minutes long. So let's kick things off with my positives. And I want to start things off with the lead of the show, as well as one of the executive producers, and that is Jamie Foxx. Now, I'm going to talk about his character, my pros with the character, but I want to take a minute to kind of appreciate the legacy that Jamie Foxx has had, because I don't know, it might just be me, but I don't feel like Jamie Foxx has gotten the credit that this man deserves. Look at his career for a brief minute here, and I won't go through everything, but looking at him starting off, cut from that cloth of Def Comedy Jam, which was the comedy that I loved growing up, and obviously comedy's a lot different from nowadays than what it was back in the day, but coming from stand-up comedy, transitioning into sketch comedy with In Living Color, which I love that show. It's probably my favorite sketch comedy, up there with, like, Mad TV and Dave Chappelle's show, but I love In Living Color. Then having his own show, the Jamie Foxx Show, which was definitely top tier sitcoms for me. Martin, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Jamie Foxx, they were like top tier comedy for me, and I just love that show growing up. And then when you look at his filmography, man, whether it be, now these are films I should have been watching when I was younger, but I enjoyed them, and that's films like Booty Call, Players Club. He's getting into more dramatic roles with Any Given Sunday. You have him in Ali. You have him in Collateral. He wins an Academy Award for Ray. He's in Jarhead. Then you look at one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino films like Django Unchained. He jumps into the superhero realm in Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I wasn't a fan of, but he's going to redeem himself later this December in Spider-Man 3. And then you look at stuff like Baby Driver, and then more recently, lending his voice to the character in Soul. I think he's an incredible actor, an Academy Award winner. He's great on television, and oh yeah, he has a Grammy under his name, so he's a singing artist. I mean, this man is so talented, and the resume speaks for itself. But let's talk about this show and Jamie Foxx as Brian. Again, a single black man who has his own company. His mom has passed away, and she's given her a cosmetic brand and company to her son, and watching him juggling all that day-to-day business life, being an entrepreneur. But then he's taking care of his daughter, who's recently lost her mom, and him being this full-time dad and juggling being not only a dad to a teenager, but a teenager girl. So all the life lessons he's tried to instill in her and all the positive influence that he has on her, I felt it was so good to see Jamie Foxx in this type of role, and being back in the sitcom realm in television where he kind of started off with was just so fun. He has some great life lessons to pass on to his daughter. He has some funny moments with his own family and other characters that we get without this show, and I thought that Jamie Foxx was really great. And again, seeing him back on TV for the first time, he's done like some hosting gigs on other TV shows, Saturday Night Live. He had his own kind of game show a couple years ago, but seeing him back in this kind of sitcom, multi-cam format was a lot of fun for me personally. There's some things that wasn't all that great for me with Jamie Foxx's character, Brian, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but for the most part, I really enjoyed his character. But the MVP, the rising star, someone I'm going to keep an eye out for the future, that was Kyla Drew as Sasha, who plays Jamie Foxx's daughter in the show. She's like a 15, 16-year-old in the show. She's actually 17 in real life, and she has like 37 credits under her name already in her young career. she was fantastic, man. Again, she was my favorite character. Not only was she casted perfectly, again, in a lot of these shows, they have these 24-year-olds playing 16-year-olds, and yeah, they look like they're kids, but you can just know the way they carry themselves. Like, you have way too much life lessons to be this 16, 15-year-old. But I thought Kyla played the role perfectly as someone that grows up in this generation with the cell phones, TikToks, Instagram, but also being grounded, having some things you can relate to. She recently lost her mother, so she's able to play into the dramatic roles. She's going bar for bar, comedy for comedy bit with a legend like Jamie Foxx. I thought Kyla as Sasha was not only my favorite character, but she had some of the best moments in the episodes and some of the more dramatic moments. And I thought this young girl, again, not only was she the best character for me in the show, but she is a rising star, someone that I've seen her, I won't say never. She's been in other smaller roles on TV shows and movies that I've seen her in, but this was the most I've seen of like her, kind of full acting sensibilities. And I thought she was fantastic. So again, Kyla, I am a big fan of yours, and I can't wait to see what you do next. And also another character that was also cut from that same Death Comedy Jam roots, as well as In Living Color. I'm talking about David Alan Grier, who plays Pops, who is the dad of Brian, the grandfather of Sasha. He was funny as hell, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I love David. I love, him coming from the Wayans brothers and kind of those laughing and comedy sensibilities. He brought that to the show. I thought his kind of evolution of the character, who's someone that has served time, trying to reacclimate himself into society, having his life lessons passed on from his son that he's trying to instill in his granddaughter, and his interaction with his daughter. I found Pops to be a really enjoyable character, and I thought that David Alan Grier was fantastic and had a lot of funny bits. There's other couple supporting characters like Aunt Chelsea, who is the sister and the daughter of Pops. She didn't have that much to do, but when she did have screen time, I found her to have some really good screen presence, and I also thought she was incredibly beautiful, so I'll just put that in there as well. And she has her kind of side story involving Johnny, who is the best friend of Jamie Foxx's character, which we'll talk about Johnny a little bit later. And then even another character like Stacy, who is not the biggest character in the show, but if they do get a green light for season 2, I could see that being like a love interest. But I thought Stacy was another interesting character. So for the most part, man, the main characters and a lot of the supporting characters really kind of fit within their roles and really brought a lot to this show, which brings me into a lot of other things I want to pinpoint on. I talked about this being a sitcom, which I grew up with sitcoms. I don't really watch sitcoms that much, and if I'll be honest, this is the first Netflix sitcom I've watched from episode 1 all the way to the end. I've seen some of the other stuff in the past that they've offered, not really for me, and if I'm being honest, I don't really watch sitcoms in general. That can be ABC, NBC, you name it. I'm not a sitcom guy. I used to be, but not nowadays. But one of the things I loved about sitcoms growing up was the theme song, and this show has a pretty lit theme song, and I'll just say that it was fire. I really enjoyed it. I'd never skipped the intro because I was a big fan of the theme song, but diving more into I really enjoyed about the show. As we know with sitcoms, especially growing up back in the day, you used to have like the lesson of the week, right? And I thought for the most part, the show did have some nice kind of life lessons that we all can relate to in our day-to-day lives. But something I really appreciated about this show was the positive light that this show shined on a single black man who has his own business, who's taking care of his business, but also taking care of his daughter. We don't see that much in society, right? It's always either the dad's not there or they're too busy worried about their sex life, and it's just like they don't always shine a good light on a fatherly figure in a young girl's life. The only time I've really seen that on sitcom television, and it's been a while, it's probably like the mid-2000s with One-on-One, which was a fantastic show. So I really appreciated that aspect of fatherhood, and not a father and son relationship, a daughter and mom relationship, but a father and his daughter, a single dad with this teenage daughter. I actually really enjoyed that they shine a light on that relationship because we don't see it that often. And then also just the relatability factor of the show, not only for universally speaking, I think a lot of people can relate to the show, and I'll touch on the subject matters here, but also in the black community. There's a lot of things that we can all relate to if you are in the black community, things that are funny to me, like things like the black community and not trusting therapy sessions or not going to therapy, or when they tackle things like stereotypes of like the black community and going to church every single Sunday, or it could be things like the shoe community, or how the show kind of tackles the social commentary of what's going on in our day-to-day lives, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But then shine the light on the universal themes I think everyone can relate to, like parents, for example, how parents follow their kids, the different apps of showing where their kids' whereabouts are, whether it be tackling online bullying or family reunions or barbecues, or how the show tackles like fake IDs So I think not only does this show speak to just everyone of every, parents, if you're not a parent, if you're a teenager, if you're adult, if you're black, you're white, Puerto Rican, Asian, I think everyone can relate to things in this show. But also, like I said, it does have a lot of things that in the black community that I really appreciate that this show had to shine a light on. In regards to my favorite episode, without diving into spoilers, episode 2 was the funniest. It also had the best dramatic beats with Kyla's character involving her mom, and it dealt with religion. So that was my favorite episode of the series. Going into my criticisms here, and I'm going to start with the smaller nitpicks of the show. First and foremost, they did this thing where they would break the fourth wall, which I'm not necessarily a fan of when movies and shows break the fourth wall. It's a very delicate thing. Some things do it well, others don't. And not that it was terrible, I just didn't think it fit the format of the show, so I wasn't a fan of that. And then I mentioned some of the life lessons, the lessons of the week. Some of those lessons felt a bit incomplete and underwhelming and really didn't add much to the conversation they were trying to bring to the forefront. So some of those lessons didn't really work for me in regards to what they were trying to say in regards to the subject matter. But diving more into the meat and potatoes of my criticism, I would say once you get into that 4th or 5th episode, a lot of the charm of the show, the charisma, the momentum, the jokes kind of felt a bit stale. They were a bit underwhelming, and it became a little bit more formulaic in regards to how they gave the jokes. And also, not that sitcoms have to have this continuous through line. A lot of sitcoms don't have, this story carries over to this episode and it all ties together. It's obviously just like a day in a life type of show when you have sitcoms. But when it comes to the stories in the second half of the show, they just weren't all that interesting to me, which brings me into the show shifting the focus on some of the supporting characters, which I mentioned the character Johnny, who's the best friend of Brian, who's a police officer, and he goes through this transition of his career in this show. And again, I didn't think the actor was bad, but I just didn't really care for Johnny. Number one, his relationship with a certain character, I'm like, okay, that would never happen. I won't say who relationship is involved with who, but it was just like, there's a little bit far-fetched. But nonetheless, when it comes to Johnny, I just didn't find his character to be all that interesting. He does have an episode where he was kind of funny doing these impressions, but outside of that, I wish the show would have focused more on less of Johnny, more on Brian and Sasha, less of Johnny and more on Chelsea or Pops or even Stacy of that matter. I just felt like they focused on that character way too much for my taste because I wasn't all that interested in that character, which brings me into, I mentioned I am a huge fan of Jamie Foxx, but Jamie Foxx in this show did a lot of impressions, and a lot of his impressions to me fell flat. He did a pretty good job with Floyd Mayweather, but his Obamas and a couple other characters I found to be a little underwhelming and all, not that funny at all. And again, comedy is very subjective, but I didn't find his impression to be that good or spot on, which brings me into him playing these characters that he kind of goes out of the Brian character. He plays these, created characters. One of the characters was funny. I thought that the preacher was a pretty funny character, but I'm thinking of characters like Cadillac Calvin and also Rusty, who's this amalgamation of Tiger King meets like this Trump supporter. I didn't find that Rusty character to be funny at all. And then lastly, this is my least favorite episode, which is episode 8, which is the finale of the show. It involves a police situation with racial profiling, and I'll say this about the episode. Number one, it was bad timing. By the time I'm recording this video, there were some recent incidents that happened of someone losing their life due to police brutality, as well as someone that was racially profiled. So I thought the timing was a little bit off, but even minus that, when the show kind of tried to tackle what was going on in the police and in the black community, I found that they kind of mishandled that subject matter. And also, I just felt like the execution of it was just kind of poorly done because they tried to mix in the seriousness of the situation and also kind of do some jokes at the same time, and it just didn't mesh well for me. So episode 8, and whenever it's another episode that they deal with like kind of police stuff, I just found that to be just kind of really mishandled in my personal opinion. So before I give you all my overall thoughts of the show, make sure to like the video, share the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and so, of course, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. That way you can get the alert when I drop early content like so. So with that being said, overall, it was nice to have this shot of nostalgia, seeing one of my favorites growing up back in this sitcom format. And for the most part, I was entertained. The show did introduce me to Kyla Drew, who is a star on the rise. I would say the first 3 episodes were the show at its best. It was the funniest. It had the most kind of more dramatic, serious moments. And then episodes 4 through 8 were mediocre at best. But even with that being said, I do commend the show for showing and shining a positive light on a single black dad taking care of his daughter and seeing their relationship, something you rarely see in today's movies or shows. And I'll just say this, I think for the most most part, with this relationship being established between Netflix and Jamie Foxx, whether it be Project Power and this show, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a season 2. So with that, I would say, with this being a family-oriented show, give it a watch. Even if you don't have a family, if you're a fan of Jamie Foxx, give the show a watch. It's not the best show in the world. I'm not saying it's a must-see show of the week, but I had a fun time with it. And if there were to be a season 2, which I do see that happening, because I've seen a couple episodes of the other sitcoms on Netflix, which I'm just like, this got multiple seasons. I know this show will get multiple seasons. And if it does, I'll probably give it a watch. So that's my thoughts on Dad, Don't Embarrass Me. But I want to know your thoughts. If you have seen the show, what were some of your favorite moments, your least favorite moments? Would you like to see a season 2? And also to answer my question at the beginning and let me know yours in the bottom now in the comments. My favorite sitcoms growing up were Martin, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, as I had mentioned, Jamie Foxx show, as well as The Office. And then as far as comedy sketch go, it's definitely Dave Chappelle. Also, A Living Color. I put A Living Color all the way up on the top of the hill as far as sketch comedy shows with Dave Chappelle. And then I would say Mad TV, and I'm not the biggest SNL fan, but those are some of mine. And then as far as my favorite Jamie Foxx project, I got to go with Django Unchained. Ray and Collateral is kind of like a three-way tie. He has some other great projects as well. So that's my thoughts on the show. That's my thoughts on sitcoms, sketch comedy shows, favorite Jamie Foxx projects. Let me know yours in the comments. As always, make sure to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hope you all are staying safe and enjoyed this review, and we'll see you in the next video.